I'm going to go to line one. We're talking about the Nashville FOOTSTOMPER, and it's my understanding Debbie was a victim. Hello, Debbie. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Can you hear me?
I can. How are your feet?
Oh, so my right foot's fine, but my left foot has swollen every day of my life. I was permanently injured.
Debbie, you put a real face to. I mean, I know that it's all funny until you realize that this guy was not playing around, right? Tell me your story.
Okay, so I was a student at Belmont. It was probably in January or February of '73. I was working downtown at a bookstore. I was a blonde. He liked blondes. And I was putting books on the shelves, and he was looking at books, and he took his foot and just came down on the top of mine with his heel and then twisted.
Oh.
It left, I had patent leather on. It left a mark on my shoes. So that's what happened then. I didn't know anything about him. A few days later, I had an infection in my leg. I went to the nurse at Belmont, who sent me to the doctor, who put me in the hospital. They ran a lot of tests to find out what was wrong, and lymph and capillaries from above my ankle down were injured, and that's my story on him.
Well, it's going to be difficult having any fun with this after I hear all of that, because that's awful.
It is terrible.
That's
and,
horrible.
All of my life, it's a different shoe. It's just been something else. When I hike, I have to make sure that I have plenty of room in there. On my left foot, my right foot is fine. It is not a funny something. He was serious, and I could pick him out of a lineup today.
And I have no idea if he's still, how old of a person were you at the time? If you don't mind my asking, I'm not trying to ask your age.
No, not at all. Okay, so I'm 73 now. I'm retired. I taught school for 30 years. I was 21 at the time, planning a wedding, and it changed the course of my life in many ways. I wasn't able to take birth control pills because I had phlebitis from it, but I did not have a blood clot.
Oh, my goodness.
So it was a very serious thing.
How old of a fellow? This guy had mental issues.
Okay, he did. And let me think. So I was 21 at the time. I would say maybe 30s. It's hard to tell. Mm-hmm. I remember I can see him, and I have researched him since. And it is one and the same person. I believe he served time in jail for some of these.
Oh, no. I have. If you don't know that information, Debbie, I have that. Yes, he served between, there was a span of time for about 10 years that he served all but 11 months in jail, mainly for stomping feet. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And, when it happened and he did his twist on my foot, he said, "Oh, my goodness, I'm so sorry. How are you? Are you okay?" And, I was in agony. But, he was a tall guy. I was only 5'3". He was a good height, a thin person from what I remember. But I have seen his pictures since then, and it is the same person.
Did you know at the time that this was an epidemic, that he was doing this to a lot of women? Did you have any?
No. I was a student. I was in my junior year at Belmont. I was, taking a heavy load. I was working at a bookstore downtown, and I just wasn't aware of what was going on in Nashville. I just knew what was going on, in my life, and
well, my goodness,
so I didn't know anything about that.
Well, if you're listening, you will know all about. This guy went to jail multiple times. Did you report him, or did he play it off like it was an accident?
He played it off like it was an accident. I had no idea. I thought this person was sincere. I also thought I wondered, about him, because honestly, if you step back on someone with those dress heels on and twist, there's something there, but I didn't know at the time. And then after Belmont, I lived back in eastern North Carolina, so I wasn't aware of everything that was going on with him. So anyway, then I decided to look him up after we got so much internet and everything is so easy now. And there he is, the Nashville FOOTSTOMPER.
My goodness, Greg. Well, please, Debbie, continue to listen. It's a fascinating story that you tell, and the story gets even more fascinating. I was amazed by it, and obviously it is easy. Thank you, Debbie, for the call. It's easy to, Debbie was a victim of the Nashville FOOTSTOMPER, permanent injury. And it's easy to laugh at this, and you can't help but laugh to keep from crying. I mean, a lot of people had a lot of fun with this over the years. I'm just learning about it. Every city's got some quirks, and like in Birmingham, there was a guy that rode around in what was called the Batmobile, and he called himself Batman, and he did this for like 12 years, and he would report crime. He had scanners, and he would go to crime scenes, and then he would call the cops. He was not a cop, but he would report crimes. I mean, it's this type of stuff that is city-centric. And I found out about the FOOTSTOMPER, and I'm like, well, I've got to talk about this, because surely there are people that remember the Nashville FOOTSTOMPER, and there are plenty of them. I never in my wildest imagination dreamed that we would have a victim of the FOOTSTOMPER. The research that I have done goes to an article coming from the Nashville scene. The article was written in 2002. But starting in the late 1960s, according to the Nashville scene and reports from the Tennessean, a black North Nashvilleian by the name of George Mitchell launched a one-man war upon the feet of local women. Clad in hard black dress shoes, Mitchell would slide up to his victims and bring the wooden heel down on the tender bones of their insteps. To the Nashville media, it was a joke that never got old. For 18 years, the FOOTSTOMPER inspired board copy editors to a smirky, snarky headline such as "FOOTSTOMPER gets the boot again," "Cools heels in jail." News anchors, scarcely hiding their amusement, could not wait to report the latest attack. He gave them plenty of chances. By the mid-1980s, between 1970 and 1985, George Mitchell was arrested more than 40 times. In the 15 years between 1970 and 1985, he spent all but 11 months in jail. And as soon as he got out of jail, he went back down to Church Street, back down to downtown Nashville, and commenced to stomping on feet again. At the height of his notoriety, however, the FOOTSTOMPER vanished. The story faded out of memory. Yet the Nashville scene in 2002 tracked him down, or at least tracked his story down. I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. In the meantime, Gary's in the borough. Hey, Gary, what's up?
Hey, not a whole lot. Just a few things. My mother is in her 90s and raised in Cumberland City, Tennessee. In 1918, I think it said they started daylight savings time. But her father, in the Second World War, they was building Camp Campbell, now Fort Campbell. And they would go and work. A lot of the older farmers got jobs, which was a blessing to them. And they would go and work during the day and come home and work in the afternoon. Supposedly that's what happened in the First World War. It's what I read, but my mother said that was definitely in the Second World War. It's what they did. You're talking about the FOOTSTOMPER. This is crazy. I worked in 1973 at the King Sloan down on Church Street. It was King Sloan store. And I worked there during the summertime in high school. And this guy came in and bought a big old set of, or big old shoes, Florsheim, real nice pair of shoes. They were not cheap. And I worked in the shoe department that summer. Anyway, I thought that was strange. I didn't know who he was. Guy I worked with said he goes around stomping on people's feet. I thought that's strange. And now to hear you talk about it today, that brings back a lot of memories. That was the summer of '73 when I saw him. And he bought a pair of Florsheim shoes up there at King Sloan on Church Street.
Well, let me promise you this, Gary. He did some stomping with those shoes. I guarantee you.
I understand.
I mean, 1970. Thank you, Gary, for the call. 1973, he was just getting into it. As of 2002, have no idea where the FOOTSTOMPER is now, whether he's still alive.
Wonder if he ever got his ass kicked.
Well, I don't know.
He certainly deserved it.
He spent a lot of time in jail, Weaver.
Yeah, well, he might have got his just desserts.
But here's the deal. As of 2002, he was a father and grandfather and was very apologetic, said that he had finally got his mind right and his life in order. How about that?
Do you believe him, though?
No, well, I don't know. Once FOOTSTOMPER, always FOOTSTOMPER. Yeah. I'm not trying to, he broke women's feet.
He broke their feet. And this poor woman we just heard from, she's still suffering from it today.
Suffering. This dude had clear mental issues. And there was not a lot that the police officer, but apparently in 1985, the city had gotten enough of the Nashville FOOTSTOMPER. They had put him in jail. He spent most of his youth in jail. He emerged only to stomp again. This is from the Nashville Scene story. It became clear Mitchell was more interested in feet than anything else. In 1966, a woman from Greenbrier accused him of stomping her foot 3 times at 3 different stores in Nashville's Church Street shopping district. He was sentenced to a year at the state training school. No sooner than he was released that he stepped up his attacks. Police couldn't keep up. In 1968, he was arrested for 1 charge before police could even process 2 other claims. By this time, Mitchell was 19 years of age, so he's 19 and 68, 49. He very likely could still be alive, by the way.
He could be.
He would spend most of his youth in jail, emerging only to stomp again. Sometimes he would stomp on women's feet within minutes of his release. This guy had, I don't know. In the Greyhound bus depot in 1983, he strode in after midnight wearing a 3-piece suit and a red rose in his lapel. He stood there and stomped 3 women and ran before the security guard tagged him. Victims said that he would apologize profusely after the event. He said the experience gave him no pleasure, but he couldn't help himself. His stomach would clench, his body would shake. Next thing he knew, he was going downtown to go to jail. I'd rather be dead than stomp on another woman's feet, he told the Tennessean in 1985, but it's uncontrollable. Why did he do it? Psychiatrists who have been interviewed by, there's a documentary on this dude, by the way. What is the documentary called? It was actually a pretty good name of the documentary. I'll figure it out. I'll find it in this story. Injurious George. Instead of Curious George, it's entitled Injurious George. Psychiatrists say that he had obsessive compulsive disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, and not surprisingly, a major foot fetish. No doubt there was a racial component as well, as most of the victims of Mitchell were blonde white women, the sort who might have attended the schools that he couldn't or wouldn't, according to the story. There it is. I was fascinated. I thought maybe it'd fascinate y'all. The Nashville FOOTSTOMPER. That's what we know. He was alive as of 2002, and according to the Nashville Scene article, he had attempted to make amends and had gotten over his issues, and he's not in state and not in jail, and did not wish the interviewer at the time to tell anybody about his whereabouts because he felt like he had turned his life around and was ashamed of his past discretions. Well, there you go. And no word on whether anybody, as Ken Weaver so delicately put it, kicked his ass during these times. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe they did, and he said, you know what? This is not worth stomping feet.
Yeah.
It's 54 after the hour on Super Talk.